Don't call it a comeback. I'm Michael Montero for Boxing Monthly, and you're watching the Neutral Corner number 50. Danuch! Latest issue of Boxing Monthly out on the shelves. Make sure you check it out. You know, I love this magazine, and one of the reasons, there's a really cool story in this issue about the original fight of the century. This was a bare knuckle brawl from 1805. Really cool story. You don't get stories like this in other boxing magazines. So you history buffs out there, you boxing historians, another cool reason why you should check out Boxing Monthly. They have stuff like that all the time. So we had a little hiatus in the month of August. There wasn't a whole lot going on, the Olympics and all that stuff. It was the dog days of summer. A lot to catch up on. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna take episode number 50 and whack it into 2 parts, all right? This is gonna be like all those movies they make after the books. I can't remember, the one with the vampires and the werewolves and shit. Twilight, where the last one was broken into 2 parts. And I think they did that with Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings and all that shit. So that's what we're doing with Danuch number 50. So in this episode, okay, the first half of this episode, we're gonna do some news and notes, just talk about some of the things that have been happening. There's some goings on in the boxing world. But I also wanted to make a response video to a response video later on in this half of this episode, where you guys who follow me, who subscribe to my channel, you saw that even though I was kind of taking a month off in August, I made a couple of videos just with my cell phone. Literally took this bad boy and set it up in my living room at the table and just talked into my cell phone. I ranted about a couple things. The one thing was about Andre Ward, the press conference with Sergey Kovalev, blah, blah, blah. Been over it a million times already. And that created a firestorm, right? I got a ton of reaction from just idiots. Now, some people were cool with their disagreements with my opinions about Ward's diva tactics and everything, and sense of entitlement and his delusional fans, but a lot of people were ignorant assholes. And I wanted to give 2 examples. I'm going to do this later on. One example of a good interaction with one of my detractors, and one example of a really bad one, and just show you the contrast. So we're going to get into that a little bit later, but for now, news and notes. Okay, so a couple of fights have been finalized. November 5th, Manny Pacquiao, Jesse Vargas, Thomas and Mack Center in Las Vegas. That's not a fun event for press, because you kind of got to go way out off the strip. I don't know why they decided at that venue. It must have came very cheap, or they paid a good site fee. I'm not sure, but I've been telling you guys it was going to be Jesse Vargas, so there it is. Now, I know there's a lot of groans about this fight. Let me just say, I don't think it's a mismatch. A few years ago, obviously it would be a mismatch, but Manny Pacquiao has definitely lost, I won't even say lost a step, he's lost a few steps. And Jesse Vargas is kind of surging right now. You know, he had that fight against Tim Bradley where he was losing the fight, but really finished strong. I thought he won most of the late rounds and almost got Bradley out of there in the 12th round. And Bradley's one of the most durable guys in all of boxing. I mean, you remember that fight he had with Provodnikov where he went through hell and somehow stayed on his feet. So after that fight, Jesse Vargas went into that fight with Saddam Ali. And I believe Ali was the betting favorite in that fight. And I picked Vargas. Boom, he knocked Ali out. So Vargas is kind of surging. Much younger, very confident right now, has everything going for him. His trajectory is going up. Pacquiao's is going down. So I'm telling you, I'm not ready to pick an upset special yet, but Vargas is live in this fight. Here's the news about it though. HBO really wants no part of it. And really, they just want no part of Manny Pacquiao at this point. 2 weeks later, November 19th, is the Kovalev-Ward fight. And by the way, tickets officially go on sale this Friday. Finally, they go on sale. So I tweeted out where you could go and all that. If you guys have any questions, ask me if you're interested in getting tickets for that fight. But that fight's legit happening. T-Mobile Arena. Tickets go on sale Friday. But anyway, that's 2 weeks after this Pacquiao thing. And HBO is obviously investing in the future here. You know, they don't want to have both of these pay-per-views that close to each other. They've already raped the hell out of their subscribers this year, asking them to buy too many pay-per-views. They don't want to throw 2 more at them within a couple weeks' time. So they passed on this Pacquiao fight. Bob Arum's really bitter and pissed off at HBO right now, but of course he's going to continue doing business with them, with his other fighters like Terrence Crawford. But, you know, look, HBO didn't pony up the dough for Crawford, Postal. Now they're not wanting this Pacquiao-Vargas fight. I can see why Bob Arum's a little butthurt right now, but, you know, some of that's on Bob too, let's be honest. I think part of this, though, is slightly political, okay? Pacquiao has said a lot of stupid shit in recent years. As he's gotten more and more religious, some of the religious zealotry has gotten kind of out there. And most of the executives at HBO, let's just say Manny would not approve of their lifestyle, okay? So I do think there's a political element to this. Now, if Pacquiao wanted to fight Terrence Crawford, obviously I think HBO would buy into that fight. But short of something like that, I don't think you're going to see Pacquiao on HBO again. It's possible he could go over to Showtime. It is possible. But I think Arum has been looking at streaming services. So this might be the first boxing pay-per-view, you know, high-profile, quote-unquote, pay-per-view that is strictly an online streaming service, you know, that's broadcasting it that I can think of in the history of this whole pay-per-view thing. So maybe some groundbreaking stuff happening with that fight. But anyway, more to come about that later. I already talked about Kovalev Ward. Triple G, Gennady Golovkin, going over to the UK, I believe, Monday. Probably about the time I'm releasing this video. Should be heading over there. They are thinking about probably going to have an open workout over in the UK on Tuesday, September 6th. More to come about that, but just mark that on your calendars for you guys over in London. Gennady Golovkin, open workout, talking about open to the public, Tuesday the 6th. So make sure you check that out. Speaking about Top Rank, they just signed Tim Bradley to a 2-year contract extension. So look, Tim Bradley, one of my favorite fighters. You guys know that. One of my favorites of this past generation. I think he's going to go into the Hall of Fame one day. In the twilight of his career, and now he's looking to either do a fight in December. He's in the running for the Miguel Cotto fight in December. So that could happen. We'll see. If that doesn't happen, he's probably going to come back and fight in January on HBO. The big question is, who does he fight? If it's, you know, obviously the Cotto thing could happen. That'd be a money grab. And a winnable fight for Bradley at this stage. But after that, who does he fight? There's not many people, not many fighters in the Top Rank staple that Tim could go at this point. If Vargas were to beat Pacquiao, that's a no-brainer. They would do a rematch. Ruslan Provodnikov, you know, people have talked about that rematch, but Ruslan I think he's on his way out of the sport at this point. And he's no longer with Top Rank. So I don't see that happening. But you remember Bob Arum and Al Heyman recently broke bread, right? So Heyman has a ton of fighters at welterweight. And he's in no rush to put them all in there against each other. Errol Spence, Keith Thurman, Danny Garcia, all these guys. So maybe we will see Tim Bradley fight some of these guys. Even if it's somebody like Sean Porter to start out with. That's probably good. That would probably be a really ugly fight. I don't know why I just said that. Don't hit me! I know, that would be a pretty ugly fight. But hopefully we don't see that. But I do think there's a possibility we could see Bradley in there with somebody like Danny Garcia or something. And I think that'd be a pretty entertaining fight. So Tim Bradley is going to be around for at least a couple more years. Marcos Maidana won't. Marcos Maidana has officially retired from boxing at 33 years old. And look, I don't think Marcos Maidana, he's not a Hall of Fame worthy fighter or anything like that, but he was one of those guys that every generation, you need guys like Marcos Maidana who made for great fights, made for some fun nights, and gave everyone a challenge that he fought. Remember in that first Mayweather fight when they had a good ref in there, an unbiased referee, Tony Weeks. That was a very entertaining fight. Even though Floyd clearly won, you know, Marcos gave him a push a little bit, right? And he landed some shots. It was kind of fun. But for me, the highlight of Marcos Maidana's career was that fight against Adrian Broner a year or so ago. That was just fun. And I remember it was one of the first fights that I watched live with Tiffany. And that made her a diehard boxing fan right there. It was that fight and the Bradley Provodnikov fight that sealed the deal for Tiffany. And that's when I knew I had a winner with her because she was a diehard boxing fan at that point. Let's see, what else is going on? Well, okay, the Canelo Smith pay-per-view card is fucked. There's a couple of good fights that have fallen on that card, but originally Luis Ortiz, Cuban heavyweight, was supposed to be on there. That fight, well, he pulled out of the card. More about that in a second. But same thing with Billy Joe Saunders. Now, look, Billy Joe Saunders, guys, I beat up on Andre Ward for some of his tactics. I beat up on other fighters. Billy Joe Saunders, you can't defend this guy. I know he's a UK fighter, and a lot of you guys over there in the UK want to back him. But actually, there's a lot of you guys in the UK that are shitting on him too. They're sick of his crap. Billy Joe Saunders was offered a fight, the co-feature, on that Canelo Smith card, right? And if he won and Canelo won, they were supposed to meet in December on regular HBO. Now think about the exposure that would have given Billy Joe Saunders. And by the way, that December fight was supposed to be at 160 pounds from what I'm hearing. Canelo was willing to go up to 160 for that fight. But Billy Joe Saunders, you just turned down the biggest payday of your career against the biggest name in the sport right now, at least in North America, Canelo Alvarez. Possible fight with him, but on his card, right? So the visibility there is huge. Now, I don't think the Canelo Smith pay-per-view card is going to do more than about 300,000 buys or so, but they're going to sell over 30,000 tickets at that stadium there in Arlington, Texas. I believe there are already over 20,000 tickets sold. So you're going to be fighting in front of 30,000 plus fans. You're going to be on American television for the first time. Co-feature on a big pay-per-view card. And then you possibly get a fight with Canelo on regular HBO to close out the year. That would be another career high payday. And it would be in front of a much, much larger audience. The venue for that fight hasn't been set, but even if it was in Vegas or something at T-Mobile, you'd have to think the British contingency would come out for that fight. Obviously, the Mexican contingency would. It'd probably do a pretty good crowd at the T-Mobile. Not saying it'd maybe do a sellout, but damn near close to it. And it'd do a hell of a rating on regular HBO. And even if Saunders, let's say, were to lose that fight, he'd be in very, very good position financially to make demands with other fighters, work his way into a title spot against maybe somebody like Danny Jacobs or whatever, a title opportunity. Because at that point, he could say, look, man, I fought in front of huge crowds, big pay-per-view events, I'm commanding big paydays, so let's talk business. Now he's sitting idle, and I think he has a fight scheduled against a nondescript opponent. Man, this guy is just blowing his career. I talk about other guys, all the time here in the States, a lot of American fighters pulling that kind of bullshit. Danny Garcia is one of them, right? But at least Danny Garcia at some point fought some tough guys. He really did at 140 pounds. Billy Joe Saunders, man, you're just blowing your career. And at some point, he's going to get stripped of that title if he doesn't fight somebody legit. But he's off that Canelo Smith card. I mentioned before Luis Ortiz is. Luis Ortiz is just the latest in a long line of Cuban professional boxers that just make horrible business decisions. I don't know what it is. I've heard theories about it. I've heard people say that it's just because when these guys defect because of the system they come from, or everything is kind of handled for them. It's that communist kind of system, right? There's always a bunch of voices in your ear telling you, do this, do this, do that, do that. they don't really think for themselves. And then when they get here to America, they kind of don't know how to act. Or sometimes over in Europe, a few of them have gone over there too. The Cubans that go over to Europe tend to handle themselves a little bit better because there's less Cubans there. Here in America, there's a lot of Cubans, especially in Florida and everything, right? So when these guys defect and they come over here to America, they've got a lot of ears. They got a lot of people whispering in their ear, telling them, you should do this, you should do that. And most of the time, it's not good advice. It's better advice for the person telling them the stuff than it is for the actual fighter, right? So Luis Ortiz is out of his deal with Golden Boy Promotions, who went above and beyond working with this guy after the performance-enhancing drugs issue he had a couple years ago. Maybe it was 2 or 3 years ago. Nobody wanted to touch this guy with a 10-foot pole, right? He tested positive for a banned substance. He denies he ever took it, blah, 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 the same old crap we always hear, but he popped on the test. One of his fights, I believe, was changed to a no contest. I can't remember who the opponent was off the top of my head right now, but nobody wanted to touch this guy. Speaks not a lick of English, hard to market in that respect. Golden Boy Promotions gives the guy a chance. Not only that, gets him on some pretty big fights, like on the undercard of some pretty big notable fights. Last year, he was on a pay-per-view with Gennady Golovkin, right? And he started to become a diehard fight fan favorite here in the States, at least. Real diehard boxing fans really started to dig the guy. And then he had a fight against Jennings, which I believe was a headliner or a co-feature. Can't remember off the top of my head, but it was big exposure, and he performed well. And now he's got himself lined up to fight Ustinov, the giant, but very limited heavyweight, to defend his interim WBA, whatever the hell title. Now here's the deal. Nobody put up a purse bid for that fight. It was originally supposed to be on a Canelo Smith undercard, but it went to purse bid, and Golden Boy Promotions, since Luis Ortiz was arguing with them and trying to get out of his contract, Golden Boy Promotions didn't even put up a purse bid. A Russian promoter did at 600 grand, won that fight. So Golden Boy Promotions wasn't even going to put on the damn fight anyway. They weren't even going to promote it. So that's how it got off the Canelo Smith card. But Golden Boy was still trying to work with Luis Ortiz and patch things up. Ultimately, long story short, him and his people bought out the Golden Boy contract. 7 figures. They won't disclose the offer, but it's 7 figures. And it's going to be paid in multiple installments because they don't have the money now. So basically, future fights with Ortiz, portions of that purse are going to be sent directly to Golden Boy to pay for this, buying out of the contract. From what I hear, Oscar De La Hoya was furious about this because they had gone above and beyond working with this guy, and they tried to work with him, but Oscar got to a point where he's just like, here's the dollar amount, tell them, just sell the damn contract. I'm done. I'm over it. So Ortiz gets out of the contract. Now here's the thing. He's entitled to 60% of that 600 grand. The fight would have been here in the States, right? And he would have got, I don't know, what is that, 360, something like that. Now it's probably going over to Russia because it's a Russian promoter. It's probably more than likely it's going overseas. It's either Russia or Belarus, I believe. And that's 600 grand now you got to pay foreign taxes. And instead of having your promoter in charge of this thing and you getting the perks of that, right? Because promoters take care of their fighters. Just at the venue, they take care of their families. Things are comped, et cetera, et cetera. Now you're fighting for a different promoter. And your best interest is not in their mind. So you're going to be paid less because you're paying more taxes. You're in debt to buy out a contract you were just in, and you're going overseas. He just screwed his career. I wouldn't be surprised if a year or so from now, we barely even hear from Luis Ortiz anymore. Sad, but true. Let's see, what else do we have going on? Anthony Joshua, fight scheduled for November 26th. Obviously, it's going to be in London, O2. No opponent yet, but it will not be Joseph Parker. You guys who have been following, you know that Joseph Parker is his mandatory. But Joseph Parker has a fight lined up on October 1st against Alexander Dimitrenko. I think that's a great great matchup for him at this stage of his career. And obviously the timelines are too close, right? So Anthony Joshua is going to fight somebody else to close out the year. Hopefully it's a step up from the last couple guys who's been fighting. But even if not, at least he's staying busy. And the fight with Parker is supposed to happen, I believe, in the first quarter of next year. Or at least the purse bids and all that stuff have to be worked out within the first quarter next year. So the fight between Anthony Joshua and Joseph Parker will happen, I believe, by next spring. That's a really, really great fight, man. That's just a really, really great fight. Before I get into some demographic talk and some racial talk, yay, that's our favorite. Before I get into that, I just want to say another cool thing. This month, the only real boxing-related thing I did working-wise is I went up to Big Bear for the first time at that gym. I'd never been in that gym that Abel Sanchez has up there at the summit. 7,000 feet above sea level. Went up there, spent a couple days there, and watched Gennady Golovkin and his team work. They had a media workout and everything. They did a private run in the morning. And it was 4 sparring partners. One of them, Najib Mohammadi. One of them, Darnell Boone. And a couple of young guys. And just watching the way they go about business in that camp and talking to guys like Darnell Boone, who, by the way, is cool as shit. Darnell, if you're watching this, we got to hang out and have a beer sometime. You're cool as hell, man. But just talking to guys like that and hearing Darnell say, I've never been treated better in a camp like this. Everyone here is cool as shit. There's no egos. If you take a shot, you're going to take a shot. I remember Darnell saying that, saying like, you're going to take a shot sometimes. You know, he's obviously talking about Gennady, you know. But there's no egos in that gym. None whatsoever. And they had a private media workout thing where they invited members of the media to go last Tuesday. And, you know, I've gone to a million media workouts. And usually, fighter will come in, wrap his hands up, do a round or so of mitts, maybe do a round in the heavy bag, maybe jump rope a couple rounds. That's it. It's 4 or 5 rounds of work at most. I've seen some media workouts where, I remember one, Leo Santa Cruz, he literally did a round of mitt work. That was it, right? That's usually the kind of stuff you see. What I liked about this is Gennady made his sparring partners come in the ring with him, his training partners, to give them a little bit of a limelight as well, which is really, really cool, and to pay homage to them and all the hard work they do with him. And they did a full, like, 12-round, might have been 15-round workout. It wasn't mitts. There was no boxing stuff. It was straight up working out. You're talking, obviously, stretching and warming up, blah, blah, blah. Jump rope, but there was weighted shadow boxing, regular shadow boxing, neck exercises. They were doing these neck push-ups. I've never seen any other fighter do this. I've seen a bunch of neck exercises, and I've done a bunch of them. And I thought my neck was strong. Holy shit, my neck is weak. I couldn't do one, man. And if I struggled, I could get one. But I didn't want to, like, strain my neck. So, like, I got, like, halfway and just let my body drop. But if you haven't seen my Golovkin workout video, check that out. And you'll see in the beginning where Gennady, it was funny because he looks at me and goes, Michael, get in here, you try. Get in here, you try this. And Abel was like, yeah, get in there, man. They told me to go in there. I think they were picking on me because I was the big guy to show everyone how fucking hard this exercise was. But man, newfound respect because I couldn't do one. Gennady showed me how to do it and everything. Basically, you know how you do a push-up like this? Imagine you put your hands behind your back and you put your chin on a towel and you push up your body with your neck. That's what these guys were doing. And they were pumping out 5, 6 of them at a time. They'd have to take a break, you know, but they did a round of that after doing a round of other neck work. Some of the sparring partners had to use their hands to brace themselves. And a couple of them, they're like, Najib Mohammadi, he's a monster in the gym, man. I never realized how much of a monster that guy is in the gym. he was the only guy that was really kind of keeping pace with Gennady. But Gennady was just fucking around and just going through the motions of this workout. And anyway, it was refreshing to see a guy really, really work out and show you, just give you a glimpse of the work they do and the leadership. Because you saw, like, when they were doing weighted just punches, three straight minutes, they just do 1-2s, right? Then another round they do hooks, then another round they do uppercuts. And some of the younger guys, would take a break for a second to get in and be like, hey, what are you doing? Get back up, punch, come on. And then, like, the last minute of the round, he'd be like, last minute, more power, and he was like getting the young guys to push. And you could see them getting better just working with him. So it was just really, really cool to see a champion kind of mentor these younger fighters like that. You could really, really see the bond these guys have. And Abel Sanchez, Tom Loeffler, all those guys, they just make you feel like family. So enough about that. I want to get into some other things. Like I said, response to a response. And first I'm going to start with a good one. So a few weeks back, you guys know that Kathy Duva and Main Events had this press conference here in Los Angeles, and I had opinions about it. The fact that Andre Ward couldn't, be damned to show up. I know it was 3 days after his fight with Alexander Brand, but Sergey Kovalev flew up to Oakland from LA, 45-minute flight, 3 days prior, just to make a, 30-second appearance in the ring with Andre Ward to help promote their big fight coming up in November. And I just thought it was really, really unprofessional and diva-ish for Andre Ward not to return the favor. Also, that was the day that Kathy Duva and Main Events wanted to officially announce ticket sales. Well, it turns out the ticket sales, as I mentioned before, they're going to start next Friday, about a month after they wanted to start, because they already had some pre-sale orders waiting. So I made a video about that, just ranting into my cell phone, caused a big reaction. I'm not going to get into the minutia of all that, but I've gone back and forth with several people, right? And I've made videos before talking about the demographic, which is a term that myself, Steve Kim, Doug Fisher, and others have talked about in the media. Things that we see, and I understand that there's a lot of people out there who are very, very uncomfortable with that term and what it symbolizes in their mind. And I have detractors over it. But disagreeing on something, having a different point of view, isn't a crime. And grown-ass men can do that and talk about it in a grown-ass man, adult way. Then there's those other people out there who just want to jump to race and finger-pointing and name-calling accusations. So there's a guy on Twitter. His real name is Jamil Pennington, and he occasionally writes articles and stuff like that about boxing. He's a big-time fan, and his Twitter handle is Heavy-Handed J. Check him out, okay? Because we follow each other, me and him. We disagree on some things. We have some strong opinions. He very, very much dislikes my use of the term demographic, and I understand that. We talk about things related to that, and even though we might disagree on things, what I like about Jamil is that in those moments when we're disagreeing, we don't forget that we agree on a hell of a lot more shit than we disagree on. So we don't just jump to making judgments about each other or saying things, making accusations or finger pointing and all that kind of stuff. We don't do that. He might say, man, why you got to bring that up again? You're race baiting. He has said that about me. And I'm saying, I'm not race baiting. I'm trying to anti-race bait by calling out race baiters. That's what the demographic is. And so we get into this philosophical argument. Well, because of all the things that came up in the last few weeks and over that, me and him got into a back and forth on Twitter. And of course, Floyd Mayweather the Floyd Mayweather name comes up, because how can you talk about the demographic without talking about the godfather of the demographic, Floyd Mayweather, who didn't build this thing, but sure as hell built upon it, right? If it was a 2-story house before, Floyd made that shit a skyscraper. So we went back and forth, and Jamil brought up a fact that because of the way things are in America, because of the history here, because of the way he feels black men are viewed, that the only way a black American fighter, a non-Hispanic black, okay, I'm not talking Guillermo Rigondeaux, I'm talking non-Hispanic black American fighter, can get ahead and become a crossover star is to be the bad boy, as Floyd Mayweather did. And he wrote an article about this called A Black Fighter's Blueprint for Success. And I want you guys to check it out. I'm going to put a link to it below. He makes some valid points there. And he name drops me and talks about some of our Twitter interactions and stuff like that. Makes his case. And I wanted to bring up this example because Heavy-Handed Jay is what we need more of, right? The interactions me and him have is two opinionated, strong-minded alpha males that can talk to each other as brothers, as human beings, even on some shit we disagree with, in a respectable way. That's what I'm trying to get accomplished here. And even though I bring shit up that is uncomfortable, and even though he brings up shit that is uncomfortable, we're bringing up topics and points that are uncomfortable for people to hear, because we live in an age where everything stays PC and there's certain lines you just can't cross, right? You know, I come from the school, everyone can be racist. But there's some people out there that are taught that black people can't be racist. I grew up in Detroit. Black people could be racist. And, you know, that was my whole point about the Kovalev-Ward situation, is I said, just me making this video, there's going to be people calling me a racist just because I'm criticizing Andre Ward, who isn't even black. He's mixed. His mom was black. And all of these haters prove my point. But then, again, Jamil Pennington, we can talk about this shit like human beings. And that's why I keep trying. That's why I keep going there. A lot of my colleagues, like Steve Kim, he's just like, yo, man, just block these guys. Just block people that are being dicks. I'm like, yeah, but you know what? For every 20 of these dicks, there's one guy out there that's cool as shit, that really wants to talk, that really wants to have the conversation, that really wants to discuss this shit, for real. That's who I'm trying to reach. That's who I'm trying to talk to when I call all this stuff out the way I see it. So that gives me hope, man. And Jamil, I just appreciate you, man. You know, I really, really do. In regards to the opinion that black fighters have to go that route, look, I disagree with it. I think there's a kernel of truth to it. I do think black men are racialized, and there is a history of black men being viewed a certain way. But even in your article, Jamil, where you bring up the Joe Pesci bad guy example, Joe Pesci is always going to be remembered for his roles in Casino and Goodfellas, more so than My Cousin Vinny. Even though I love My Cousin Vinny, Marissa Tomei, even though I love that movie, yeah, Joe Pesci is going to be remembered for those other roles. Italian American men are racialized. Every character on TV is some sort of stereotype. And I don't even necessarily mean racial, whether it's a black dude or an Italian dude or whatever. Bald guy, fat guy, skinny guy, hipster guy, you know, slut, nerd. Every type of character you can think of is some kind of stereotype. The same thing goes for boxing, because boxing is the theater of sports, right? And I think what Floyd did was play into the bad guy role because he wasn't an exciting fighter. He's not a big guy. And American sports fans are obsessed with size. Everything in America is the bigger the better. That's why the NFL is the most popular sport in America. Americans are obsessed with size. Big. Everything bigger is better. Floyd's 150 pounds soaking wet. Most Americans just don't see a small guy like that as a dominant athlete. So Floyd had to market himself a certain way. After that first Jose Luis Castillo fight, where he almost lost, and he started taking shots from a guy that, I don't want to say limited, but Jose Luis Castillo is not exactly Pernell Whitaker. Floyd had to change his style to survive and keep that O. And it became him being a bad guy that people dislike and him having that O. That's how he marketed himself. Did Floyd have to do that? No. I don't think that's the blueprint for a black fighter. My position is, how many American-born boxing stars, crossover superstars like Floyd, are there anymore? The last one before Floyd was Oscar De La Hoya. There's just not many anymore. I point out some of the reasons why. That's why I made that Ward Kovalev video, that rant video a few weeks back. But there's reasons why, okay? So it's not just because it's a black thing, it's a boxing thing. The status of boxing in America in general, you have to have some sort of gimmick or something like that, unless you are an exciting, dynamic fighter. My blueprint for success for any fighter, regardless of race, is fight the best, take the fights the fans want to see, make for exciting fights. You don't have to knock everybody out, but at least be exciting. Engage in some back and forth. That might mean taking a shot or two here and there. And most importantly, man, be accessible to fans and media. Floyd manipulated fans and media, but he wasn't accessible to them. His hype site were the only guys that got access to him, okay? Even mainstream, like the brass of boxing media, had very limited access to Floyd. He was not very accessible. He was somewhat accessible on social media and stuff like that, but nowhere near as accessible as some of the other guys out there selling out venues outside of Vegas in the United States right now. And that's why I don't understand some of the hate Gennady Golovkin gets. And I do think there's a double standard against him with certain fans. And I do think it's racial. Because Gennady Golovkin is doing something that no American boxer has done in a long time, including Floyd, because Floyd fought exclusively in Las Vegas. Gennady Golovkin is fighting coast to coast and selling out events. He's going to fight in Texas either in December or early next year, and he'll sell out that venue down there. He's packing butts and seats. He's not the only one, but he's doing it better than any other American fighter right now. And you can say, oh, it's because he's a white guy, blah, blah, blah. I don't think so, man. Because I'm just thinking off the top of my head, Kelly Pavlik, the last American-born, quote-unquote, white real champion, right? He had to win 2 mandatories to get a shot at Jermaine Taylor. And even after he beat Jermaine Taylor, he was still doubted. And it's outside of his hometown of Youngstown, he wasn't selling shit out. He wasn't a household name. He wasn't doing spots on TMZ or whatever the equivalent was back then. He was still doubted. He still had to prove himself twice as much as Jermaine Taylor had to, because he didn't, quote unquote, look the part. What do you think people mean when they say that? Double standards, man. Now again, we may disagree. I gave my position, you gave your position. But I like that we could do this as adults. And you know, one last thing, I don't think playing up the bad boy thing is just in boxing. You look at MMA with Conor McGregor, right? He's an Irish guy. That's as white as it gets. He plays up the bad boy thing. He's kind of known as the Floyd Mayweather of MMA, right? I believe he's one of the best pound for pound. I don't watch UFC like that, so guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he's considered like one of the top best MMA fighters. And he's built himself up playing the bad guy. He's sold a lot of fights playing the bad guy. Hell, man, I remember college football, Brian Bosworth. Some of you guys out there are probably too young to even know who that is. That dude built himself up. He was the original Floyd Mayweather. He was the original bad boy, and that was college football. So that shit is across the board. It's not just in boxing, and it's not just black dudes. But let me get into another interaction, okay? In that Kovalev Ward video I made, that rant video, go back and find it. I think it's called like Kovalev Ward promotion off to a bad start. And then I made a reaction video called Counterpunching the Demographic. Check those videos out. But there are several reaction videos to that video out there on YouTube. And a lot of you guys forwarded them to me and stuff like that. You tweeted them to me. Some of you emailed them to me. And I was amazed. Just amazed at some of the crap being said out there. Most of it was from like kids. And you could tell these were like young guys who probably still live at home. They're in college or something. They don't have much life experience, and they're just angry young guys, and they're just sounding off, whatever. I don't really fucking care. But there was one guy in particular who I've seen cover events, and I know him on a first name basis. Credentialed media member. I've seen him in gyms. I've seen him at fights. Met, shook hands, shot the shit, right? He even approached me before about doing a project together, wanting to collaborate on a project together. He's a guy who works in production on reality TV shows. So he works in the entertainment business, if you can call reality television entertainment. I can't stand it, but he works in the entertainment business. And you guys know I dabble in entertainment business. So this is a guy that I can relate to on a lot of things. He posted a video after mine. I can't even remember what the hell it's called, but it's basically, it's something like Kathy Duva in the white media hates Andre Ward or something. I don't even want to say the guy's name or the name of the channel because it's not even worth watching, guys. It's not even worth watching. But in reaction to some of the fallout from Andre Ward not going to that thing, let me just show you the picture real quick. This is the picture that was up on the video. That pretty much sets a tone, doesn't it? When you see that picture. So immediately, it's extremely polarizing. The guy doesn't show his face or anything, obviously. He just blasts this picture of a dude in a hood. Puts Kathy Duva's name on there, because I guess Kathy Duva's in the Ku Klux Klan now. And talks about how the white media, because boxing is such a white sport, protects Kathy Duva. This is news to me. Calls out myself, Doug Fisher, and Steve Kim. And talks about us, relates us to the KKK, and talks about how our word of demographic or whatever is basically like saying other words like racial slurs, and that it's basically the same as wearing a hood. Never mind you, it's an Italian guy, a mulatto guy, and a Korean guy. None of us, the three of us, would not qualify for KKK membership or neo-Nazi skinhead membership or any of that shit. I don't know Kathy Duva's ethnic background. I don't know if she'd qualify or not, to be honest. But I know the three of us wouldn't. I wanted to post the whole video. I'm not going to do that. Let me just play for you real quick a snippet from my video that several people responded to in the most asinine way. Real quick, here's a part of my video where I call out Andre Ward fans. Check this out.
All these Andre Ward supporters all over America who are saying this guy gets so disrespected, where the hell were you Saturday night? Because you sure as hell were in Oakland at the Oracle Arena. So put your money where your mouth is, like the British fans do, the Mexican fans do, the Puerto Rican fans do. Travel and go to one of his damn fights if he's that special to you.
Pretty straightforward, right? All I'm saying is Andre Ward fans, you guys out there, you Twitter warriors, you guys making YouTube videos defending him, calling everyone racist who criticizes him. Why don't you go to his fights? Why don't you cover his fights if you're in the media? Why didn't you fly up there or drive up there to Oakland to cover that fight with Alexander Brand? Why don't you write articles about him? But seriously, if you're a fan, why don't you spend the money, fly to Oakland, and support him? Because Puerto Rican fans do, British fans do, Mexican fans do, right? For their fighters. Here's what this idiot had to say about that.
What else you say? Well, if you guys are truly Andre Ward fans, you guys should spend your money and go visit him. The Puerto Ricans do, the Mexicans do, the Brits do. Why he just didn't say, why don't you dumbass niggers spend your fucking money and go support your black fighter? This is just some flat out bullshit. It's funny how that's why the Ku Klux Klan, that's why they wear garments and hoods. So they don't know, because they don't want you to know who the fuck they are. Steve Kim, Doug Fisher, that whole fucking clan. That whole fucking clan.
So I could probably make an hour-long video just unpacking the idiocy of that little part of this video. And believe me, there's a few more gems in that video he made. This is just one I'm plucking. Let me explain something to, well, those of you who subscribe to my channel, you guys are pretty worldly and educated. I know you already know this, so forgive me for wasting your time. But let me explain something to those of you out there who don't understand this. British is not a race. Puerto Rican is not a race. Mexican, not a race. They're nationalities. British fans, or UK fans, I should say, UK fans, sell out fights for Carl Frampton and Anthony Joshua, right? Doesn't matter what race the guys are, as long as they're UK fighters, they support them. Puerto Rico, same way. Right off the Puerto Rican census numbers, Puerto Rico is 75.8% white. Puerto Rico is 12.4% black. And about 12% other or mixed. Mexico is about 65% mestizo. For those of you who don't know what that means, that is a mixture of Caucasian or European blood, usually from Spain, but not necessarily from Spain, and American Indian blood. 10% of Mexico is European, white. There's even a sliver of the Mexican population that has African roots. I don't have to explain the demographics of all these countries. You guys know where I'm going with this. This idiot. Now, you know what? He's not an idiot. This irresponsible, angry, insecure person twisted my words, equated them with racial slurs and racism, took my words about nationalities, fans backing fighters of their nationalities, and conflated that with the Klan. And then name dropped Steve Kim and Doug Fisher in there because they have the same point of view on this topic that I do. And they've written and talked about it the same way I do. And I consider those guys, mentors to me. They've taught me a lot. This person who did this with a Klansman as the image on the video, this is the kind of shit that breeds hatred, anger, insecurity, fear, twisting people's words, racializing things. All of it. Not only did he validate my point in that Kovalev Ward video by doing exactly what I said people like him were going to do when I made that video, but he brought a slew of racist assholes to my page. I can take that shit. But when some of these guys start threatening Tiffany's life, threatening my girlfriend's life, some of your subscribers start doing that, we have a problem, my friend. I'll see you ringside. We're going to talk about this in person. This is the kind of shit that leads to dead police officers in Dallas, Texas. And this one hurts. It hurts. because I know you on a first name basis. We've shook hands. We've talked. You're a good guy. For you to do this, knowing who I am, knowing there ain't a racist bone in my fucking body, this is what's wrong with media in general, but specifically boxing media. But this is just a microcosm of what's wrong with our fucking society right now. You're the problem. When are we going to stop doing this shit, guys?